The idea of being able to bring some change, not overly radical change, but changes that I think
something is breaking, not quietly, not slowly, but violently beneath the polished surface of the monarchy, where smiles are rehearsed and silence is weaponized. Because this time, the whispers are not about ceremony, they're about control, about power shifting hands before the crown even moves. And at the center of it all, Prince William and Queen Camilla locked in a silent war that insiders claim has already crossed the line from tension into something dangerously personal. It didn't start with a scandal, it started with a moment. March 18th, 2026, a night that was supposed to project strength, unity, legacy. The state visit of Nigeria after nearly 4 decades, cameras flashing, diplomacy glowing, the world watching. But behind the glittering chandeliers of Windsor Castle, something cracked, and those who were paying attention, they saw it. Because while the public saw elegance, insiders saw exhaustion. King Charles III, 77 years old, moving through a schedule that looked less like duty and more like pressure. Pressure building, pressure mounting, and one man watching it all unfold with rising fury was his own son. Not concern, not mild discomfort, fury. Sources claim William wasn't just uneasy, he was angry. Quietly at first, then unmistakably, because what he saw that night wasn't a king fulfilling duty. He saw a father being pushed beyond his limit. And the more he looked, the more one question began to form. Who allowed this? Because in William's eyes, this wasn't an accident. This wasn't poor planning. This was a decision, a choice. And according to those closest to the situation, that choice led directly to Camilla. And suddenly, everything changed. To Camilla, the banquet wasn't optional. It was essential. Optics mattered. Strength mattered. The monarchy could not afford to appear weak, not now, not under global scrutiny. But to William, strength without stability was a risk, a dangerous one. Because what good is appearance if the foundation is cracking underneath? Observers noticed it, the slight fatigue, the quiet strain, the pauses that lingered just a little too long. And for William, that was confirmation, proof that his fears weren't imagined, they were visible. And here's where it stops being polite and starts becoming personal. Because William didn't blame staff. He didn't blame advisors, he blamed her. That's when concern turned into confrontation, when disagreement turned into resistance, because this wasn't just about scheduling anymore, it was about judgment, about priorities, about who gets to decide what is too much for a king who is no longer just aging, but battling something far more serious. Cancer. That word changes everything. Now suddenly, every appearance, every event, every handshake carries weight. And for William, that weight is unbearable, because he's seen this before. Loss doesn't feel theoretical to him, it feels familiar. Princess Diana is not just history, she's memory, trauma, a warning that never fully faded. And now, as he watches his father being pushed forward, smiling through exhaustion, something inside him snaps. Because in his mind, this is not just about royal duty, it's about history repeating itself in slow motion. And Camilla, she becomes the symbol of that fear, not necessarily because of what she's doing now, but because of what she represents, a past that never fully healed. Insiders say William tried to intervene, suggested slowing things down, creating space, protecting his father from the relentless machine of monarchy. But each attempt met resistance, quiet, firm, unmoving. And that resistance only deepened the divide, because now, in William's eyes, Camilla isn't just someone with a different opinion. She becomes an obstacle, a barrier between him and what he believes is necessary to protect his father. And that feeling, powerless but responsible, is explosive. Because think about it, he's the future king, the one expected to lead, to protect, to stabilize. Yet in this moment, he feels like he's watching from the sidelines, unable to stop something he believes is wrong. That contradiction is where tension turns dangerous, and it doesn't stay contained. Because behind closed doors, according to insiders, this is no longer a quiet disagreement. It's a pattern, a repeated clash of ideologies. Camilla believes purpose keeps Charles strong. That work anchors him, gives him meaning, keeps him moving forward. William believes the opposite, that rest is survival, that pushing forward might cost everything. Two visions, both convinced they are right, neither willing to step back. And in the middle of it all, a king caught between a wife who believes in endurance and a son who believes in protection. But here's where things get even more intense. Because this tension, it doesn't exist in isolation. It starts spreading, expanding, pulling in other names, other histories, other unresolved fractures that were never truly buried. And just when it feels like this is already at its breaking point, another layer emerges, another conflict, one that drags the past into the present in a way no one inside the palace can ignore anymore. Because what's coming next isn't just about health or duty or even power, it's about loyalty, allegiances, and a demand that may have crossed a line no royal has dared to cross before. And once that line is crossed, there's no going back. Because the moment that line was crossed, everything stopped being subtle. It became direct, cold, calculated, and the message, according to insiders, was impossible to misinterpret. Distance yourself or face consequences. That's the ultimatum that allegedly came from Prince William toward Queen Camilla, and this is where the story explodes into something far bigger than a family disagreement. Because this wasn't about scheduling anymore. This wasn't even about health. This was about control over the monarchy's future image. And the name at the center of this new storm? Sarah Ferguson. Now suddenly, the tension takes a sharp turn into dangerous territory. Because bringing Ferguson into the equation doesn't just reopen old wounds, it connects directly to one of the monarchy's most damaging modern shadows, the lingering fallout around Prince Andrew. And William? He sees risk everywhere. Not loud, obvious scandal, but something more subtle. Association, proximity, the kind that quietly chips away at public trust until suddenly it collapses. That's what he's trying to prevent. That's what he's reacting to. Because in today's world, perception isn't just important, it's everything. And if there's even a hint of connection to controversy, even indirectly, it becomes ammunition. Headlines, questions, doubt. So when reports surface linking Ferguson's name to sensitive documents, whether justified or not, it triggers something immediate inside William. A decision, a line drawn in the sand. Cut ties completely. But here's where it gets complicated, because Camilla doesn't move. She refuses, not out of defiance alone, but out of something deeper: loyalty, history, relationships that existed long before crowns and titles reshaped everything. For her, this isn't just about optics, it's about people. Bonds that survived decades of scrutiny, judgment, and survival inside a system that rarely forgives. And that's where the collision becomes unavoidable. Because William is thinking like a future king, structured, strategic, ruthless when necessary. Camilla is responding like someone who has already endured the worst of public rejection and refuses to abandon those who stood with her. Neither is backing down. And when neither side bends, pressure builds. Inside the palace, that pressure is described as suffocating. Conversations become shorter, glances sharper, silence heavier, because now every interaction carries weight. Every word feels like it could tip the balance. And in the background, something even more unsettling begins to emerge. A shift, not official, not declared, but undeniable. Because while the crown still sits with King Charles III, the direction, the tone, the future, it's already starting to sound like William. And that realization is where the real tension begins. Because some insiders are asking a dangerous question: has William already started acting like the king before the moment has even arrived? Is this leadership or overreach? Is this protection or control? No one is answering that out loud, but everyone is thinking it. And just when the situation feels like it couldn't get more layered, the past comes rushing back in a way that changes everything. Because this isn't just about Ferguson or Andrew or even Camilla's choices today. This goes deeper. Back to a time when two young princes watched their world fracture in front of them. Back to a name that still echoes through every hallway of that palace, whether anyone says it or not: Princess Diana. Because for William, the past isn't buried, it's active. It breathes inside his decisions. It shapes how he sees loyalty, betrayal, and protection. And when he looks at Camilla now, in moments of tension, insiders claim he doesn't just see the present. He sees history repeating. He sees the same patterns, the same justifications, the same quiet insistence that duty must come first, even when it costs something deeply personal. And that perception, whether fair or not, fuels everything. Because now every disagreement carries emotional weight. Every decision feels loaded with meaning beyond the moment. Camilla encouraging Charles to stay active? To William, it doesn't just look like support. It looks like risk, like ignoring warning signs, like choosing appearance over reality. And suddenly, the argument isn't about one event, it's about everything that came before it. That's what makes this so volatile, because when past pain merges with present conflict, logic doesn't lead anymore. Emotion does. And emotion, it doesn't compromise, it escalates. Then comes another blow, one that doesn't originate inside the palace but detonates within it. A book released at the worst possible time, written by Tom Bauer. And the title alone feels like a warning: betrayal, power, deceit, and the fight for the future of the royal family. The timing is almost surgical, because inside its pages are claims, unverified, explosive, impossible to ignore. One in particular ignites immediate tension: the suggestion that Camilla privately accused Meghan Markle of influencing, even brainwashing Prince Harry. And just like that, another fracture reopens, because William has spent years trying to contain that narrative, to separate the working monarchy from the chaos surrounding Harry and Meghan, to create distance. Now, suddenly, it's back, loud, public, messy, and worse, it's tied once again to Camilla. Whether the claims are true doesn't even matter in this moment. The damage is in the perception, the timing, the fact that it pulls everything backward just as William is trying to push forward. Inside Windsor, insiders describe the atmosphere turning colder, trust thinning, words becoming more careful, more measured, because now it's not just about disagreements, it's about who is influencing what and why. And looming over all of it is the inevitable, the moment no one can avoid, the day William becomes king. Because when that happens, everything changes. Not gradually, not softly, completely. Because then the authority becomes absolute. Decisions no longer negotiated, they're made. Structures reshaped, roles reviewed, influence reassigned. And at the center of those future decisions, Camilla. Insiders suggest her position may remain entitled, but influence, that's where things shift. Because William's vision of the monarchy is different. Smaller, tighter, controlled, no excess, no ambiguity, no lingering associations that could threaten stability. And that includes not just Camilla, but her entire circle. Every connection, every alliance, every relationship that once existed without question, suddenly re-examined under a new standard. Risk versus value. And William, he's not known for tolerating risk. At the same time, King Charles III is quietly preparing for that future in his own way. Decisions made behind the scenes, protections put in place, titles secured, even personal arrangements like properties and financial safeguards designed to ensure Camilla's stability no matter what happens after him. Because he sees it too. The shift, the tension, the uncertainty, and perhaps beneath it all, a quiet fear of what happens when he's no longer there to hold the balance together. Because once that balance is gone, there is no buffer, only decisions, final ones. And that's what makes this moment so critical, because what we're witnessing isn't just tension, it's transition. A monarchy standing at the edge of transformation, old loyalties clashing with new expectations, personal history colliding with institutional survival, and the question that no one inside the palace can fully answer yet: when the crown finally changes hands, will unity survive the shift, or will everything that's been quietly building behind those palace walls finally break into the open for the world to see?